What are the 3 most shocking things that you're going to learn in graduate school? Stick around and find out today on this episode of Navigating Academia. What's up, Navigating Academia family? This is Dr. J. Phoenix Singh here, coming to you with a new episode of Navigating Academia, your leading source for guidance on how to advance your career in academia. Now, before we get started, you guys know that I appreciate the love, so please do take a second to share this video with your friends, with your colleagues, with your students. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that bell so you get notifications every time that we post new original content, which we try to do at least a few times a month. Sometimes we get up to a few times a week even, just depending on what time of year it is, if it's application season or not, so on and so forth. But we love building content for you guys, and we love hearing from you and the types of videos that you want us to make. So please do, at the end of this video or beforehand, when you come up with a video idea, post it down in the comment section below. We'd love to hear from you. And smash that like button, of course. Unless you hate the video, in which case smash the dislike button to really stick it to me, which also helps the engagement on the video and gets it out to even more people. So I appreciate it regardless. But what we're going to be talking about today is what I perceive to be the 3 most shocking things that you are going to learn in graduate school. Especially graduate school related to any kind of a research program, but clinical programs as well, across fields. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump right in. The first thing that you're going to learn that I think is super shocking as an undergraduate when you get into grad school is that your textbooks are basically not correct. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, what you end up learning is that all these things that you thought were facts are actually not facts, they're postulates. Okay? Now, what's a postulate? A postulate is a theory that is accepted as fact. So, for example, if you're in any field of science, for example, where basically our conclusions about truth come from null hypothesis statistical testing, so for example, in psychology or the overwhelming preponderance of the social sciences, as well as the hard sciences, there is always some margin of error in terms of what we know. So what we have to rely on is not just kind of individual findings, we're relying on cross-validations of initial findings. And if you get a whole bunch of different studies with enough generalizability out there, we make this assumption that whatever those findings are, approximate truth. But the key word here is approximate. Okay? And there are so many cases of so many psychological phenomena, for instance, that I could bring up here. Good example of this, for instance, is like cognitive dissonance. If you're an undergrad, you've learned about cognitive dissonance, you've learned about Leon Festinger and, his theory and all this kind of stuff. I always explain cognitive dissonance using that movie Old School with Will Ferrell. So if you're ever interested in me explaining cognitive dissonance, leave a comment below, I'll make you a video. So what happens though is that everybody assumed that cognitive dissonance was just like the law of the land, right? Everybody assumed it for a lot of years until we had new psychologists, psychological researchers like Bem and a whole bunch of others come out and say, no, it's not always the case that cognitive dissonance holds. There's all sorts of mediators and moderators, all sorts of unique circumstances where it definitely does appear to exist or definitely does not appear to hold. So it's one of these things where things aren't as straightforward as they may have seemed in undergrad, and even the things that seem like laws, as it were, for the most part, there is still some kind of a margin of error, and that can be a little bit unsettling. That was really shocking for me, because during undergrad, when you're reading these textbooks, it really seems like the things that you're learning, it's like, okay, well, this is just how reality is constructed. Like, that's just what it feels like, right? The reality of your field is constructed by these facts, figures, statistics, etc. that are included in these textbooks, and this is what we're learning. Then you go to grad school, and all of a sudden it's like, well, maybe not exactly the case. So in other words, the textbooks are not necessarily correct, and this can be something that can bring about a lot of anxiety. At the same time, think about how important that is to be able to embrace and accept that uncertainty, and imagine how big of an impact you can make in terms of your own research, in terms of adding these individual little Lego blocks to the Lego house of your field, which is usually what individual primary studies end up doing, okay? That's number one. The second most shocking thing you're going to learn in grad school is that your professors, these people that you probably have like totally idolized in these things, they are not always right, and in a lot of cases they're not right. Again, these are the folks who are teaching from the textbook, who stood up in front of the class and told you here's what's what. Right? They stood up there and said, here's the information, this is what you need to know. They didn't say, here's what you need to assume. They presented information, usually in undergrad, as this is the case. This is it. Right? And yes, maybe that is it based on our best available research right now, but there is nothing that would prevent a new randomized controlled trial, a new meta-analysis, a new whatever it happens to be coming out to question those findings in most of the sciences. And like I said, that's very exciting, but at the same time, I can tell you guys, I remember when I was in high school and like a professor, be still my heart. A college professor came to be able to give a guest lecture in my high school psychology class. I thought I'd like died and gone to heaven. I was like uber nerd, quiz bowl king, district champs, by the way. So kind of a big deal. But at the end of the day, this was something where you look up to these guys so much. You hear, college, and you like dream of going to college, and then you're at university and you just think to yourself, oh my goodness, these guys are so high and mighty. They have all this sway. They know so much. I comparatively know so little. I remember when I was at Tufts, there was this one professor of mine. He's one of my favorite professors of all time. He would come in, no PowerPoint, no overhead projector. I'm old. We had overhead projectors. And he would just come in, literally, plop himself on top of his desk, right? He got thin as a rail, and he would just talk for like 3 hours, and he'd be quoting studies and talking about researchers and different findings, and I'm looking at this guy like, this is insane. If I can ever talk off the top of my head for like 3.5 hours about a given subject like this guy can, I'm gonna be a freaking genius, right? And it's one of these things where then when you kind of get to graduate school, these individuals become a little bit more collegial. Now, you will never hear me say on this channel that you should treat your grad school supervisor like a colleague. You will not hear me ever say that. You do need to know your place, and your place is beneath them, right? This is Yoda, you're Luke Skywalker. That's the situation, okay? But that doesn't mean that you have to be subjugated or anything like this, but it does mean that you need to recognize and kind of temper yourself down if you're someone like I was, who was just way overly confident, right, in his skills and in thinking that he knew everything, or thinking that he had way more kind of tact than he actually did. I'll tell you that right now. But that's the second thing that you're going to realize, is that your professors during undergrad who were teaching you this stuff, that everything they told you, wasn't something that was insanely transparent or something that was valuable as gold and so forth. And sometimes what you'll find is that your professors were teaching you things that, yeah, they were assumed to be true. They were postulates 5, 10, even 15 years, 20 years back, but they haven't stayed up to date with the research literature like they should. And now new things have been found. You will find that all the time, I guarantee you. So that's number 2. The third most shocking thing that you're going to realize is that your supervisor, who, especially if you're in a research program, meaning that probably when you were applying to one of these programs, you really had to make a strong case for working with that individual, that is just like some random dude or some random dudette, right? Just some random person at the end of the day. They seem like such a huge deal. They really, really do. Every field is so small in and of itself, though, and I remember, I'll tell you guys that, so the organization here in the US that kind of represents my field, which is forensic psychology, is APLS, which is American Psychology Law Society, right? If you take a look at the membership of APLS, it's between 1,000 to 1,500 people, right? Why is that important? Because this is something where, like, if you were like obsessed with just pleasing people in your field, well, there's more than 1,500 people who live in my apartment building right now. So it's like, okay, am I going to spend the entirety of my life trying to impress the people in my apartment building, on one street, in one city, in one state, on one coast of one country, on one continent of this earth, my whole life, trying to impress these number of people? No, it's completely irrational. It doesn't make any sense. We in academia get into this echo chamber though where we think that people are way more important than they actually are. And I can guarantee you that the likelihood after you graduate from grad school that the overwhelming preponderance of people you went to grad school with and the faculty in that department you will never see again, you will never hear from again. Yeah, maybe once a year you go to a conference and you walk by the person or give a head nod or something, but these people are not going to have some insane dominance over your life after you end up getting out of there. And this is something that's very natural to assume is the case, but I guarantee you that it is not. And the deeper you get into grad school, the more that you're gonna see situations, like for example, there was somebody, not my grad school supervisor, but somebody, similar, right? Like in my life, and I'll never forget seeing, it was a guy, never forget seeing this guy or whatever, eating Doritos and then just like wiping the Dorito dust or whatever, like on his white shirt and just like Dorito dust being everywhere. And this guy was like one of my heroes. One of my heroes. And I remember seeing him do it and I'm like, no, don't do that. Right? You're like ruining it for me, like in my head. But these are just random people, right? And they can be amazing people and they can make a huge difference in your life, right? But they're just as human as you are and as everybody else is, okay? And they hopefully are gonna serve a very supportive function in your life. That's what I pray for you. So those are the 3 most shocking things that I think that you're gonna learn in grad school. All right, guys, that's it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in seeing more content like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with your friends, colleagues, and students. If you're interested in working one-on-one with me, be sure to book a session. Hourly rates are at the website below. It's www.jphoenixsing.com. Help you get into grad school, help you get your dream postdoc, help you get published, all that good stuff. And speaking of publication, if you are interested in learning how to publish peer-reviewed research in the highest impact factor journals, how to be able to find grant funding opportunities and actually write successful grant proposals, as well as a myriad of other things having to do with academic books, press releases, blogs, podcasts, all related to academia, check out Publication Academy at www.publicationacademy.com. Appreciate you guys, and don't forget to get out there, take chances, and be your best self. Have a great day. Peace. Thank you so much for stopping by, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here as always. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more in this series on navigating academia, please click on one of these links over here to be able to view more original content. I hope to see you there.